Our total focus in our newsletter is speculation, not politics. When we have situations where political impacts affect how we speculate, we want to be able to mention that. But I want to make sure that we all know we have no intention of recommending any person or any political party for the purposes of politics. That is not our intention at all. I have for some time been very cautious, even negative, about the stock market, primarily because the stock market is so overpriced, number one, and because the problems that I have felt with interest rates staying as low as they are is difficult, in part due to continued relatively high inflation and other issues, most notably the size of the federal deficit, which could both put together, under normal circumstances, have a significantly higher interest rate. Perhaps we get over 5-6%, even 7% across the board, and that, I think, in and of itself would be very negative for the stock market. Recently, however, I have changed my mind, and the biggest reason I've changed my mind is the spectacular series of policies that make me optimistic that these high levels of the stock market, I don't know if it'll go much higher, but to keep these high levels is more important. One of them is that the improvement in foreign policy, specifically having to do with the kidnapping of the president, has, as I read it, shown a significant gain for the Republican Party in the latest polls of the Latino. And so that also is a factor that will help politically to continue with policies that can help the stock market. But probably the biggest news for me is the actual result of the economy in the third quarter, a growth of more than 4%, much higher than I think the average person in the financial media was thinking, and that's coming on strong. And I had a very interesting discussion video by the Commerce Secretary on what it's like to be in the cabinet and how effective that is in a number of areas. You put those things together, and I no longer think it's unlikely that for literally all of 2026, the stock market may hang in there. A final point I would mention on that regard is, and again, one of feature policies is the tariff policy, not only in terms of it cuts the deficit because we've had a significant increase in the amount of funding coming from higher tariffs, but secondly, those higher tariffs have been helpful to making a number of companies in the United States less worried about foreign low-priced competition, and therefore the manufacturing employment and other employment in the United States is starting to pick up. So those are all good factors. And then finally, I think we will have in the stock market a further gain potential in any event because, as I say, it appears more likely that will be able to keep interest rates from going much higher, which I think is another plus for the stock market. I also would mention that some of the other policies of the administration, such as the investigation of all the that has come to light, starting with Minnesota, but going beyond that, is a factor that could help in the House and in Congress, and therefore, since is trying to keep the economy growing, help him achieve that, and therefore the stock market would benefit. So you put it all together, and I think that unlike what I earlier feared, I think it's less likely that we have a major drop in the stock market. This could always change, and in my mind, as I mentioned, I think the biggest issue for the stock market is can keep interest rates low for the rest of this year. Still a question, but if he does, then I think we could be looking at a strong stock market, and not so much in the sense of any major gain, but rather keeping these high levels for 2026. If you want a copy of my book, The Speculator's Mosaic, just check below, or it can also be bought on Amazon.